Welcome. This is David Boles, Human Meme. Today's topic, Blackballed, Audree Norton. In May of 2015, a legend died at the age of 88 years old. Her name was Audree Norton. Audree-Norton. Audree was deaf. She was a pioneer. She was an actress. And Audree Norton was blackballed by the entertainment industry for standing up for disabled rights to representation. And she never worked in television again. Here's a bit of background. Audree was a founding member of the National Theatre of the Deaf in 1967. She worked to legitimize American Sign Language as not only a foreign language, but she also helped move the language out of a pidgin English variant and into a grammatically and syntactically vibrant language of its own as a visual, aesthetic performance of art. Audree also did wonderful ASL performances and interpretations of Elizabeth Barrett Browning poems, especially Sonnet 43, How Do I Love Thee? Deaf actors were always popular in silent movies. They didn't need to use their voices. Their facial expressions were magnificent. But when talkies became popular, the deaf actor became re-ghettoized and undervalued by the entertainment industry, and they were used as a one-off villain or as a disabled antiquity. That all changed with the rise of American Sign Language as a foreign language on university campuses in America. American Sign Language is now, currently, the fourth most popular language in the world, thanks in part to the dedicated work of deaf advocacy rights fighters like Audree Norton. Audree did a lot of work in mainstream television in the 1960s and 70s as a deaf character actor. She was especially effective in 1968 as a guest star on the Mannix television series, where she lip-read the murderous intentions of an unknown caller on the street, and she helped solve a double murder. Audree also subsequently appeared on Family Affair and The Streets of San Francisco, both big television shows in their time. But her biggest fame, her infamy, if you will, happened in 1978, when Audree and her deaf husband, who was also an actor, auditioned for the roles of a deaf mother and father for an ABC after-school special called Mom and Dad Can't Hear Me, starring a young Rosanna Arquette. And Rosanna was playing the role of left-out hearing daughter. The ABC casting director of the show told Audree and her husband they had won the audition, but the director of the show did not want to use them, because the director felt communicating with deaf actors who did not speak was too much of a burden on him and on the production. And so the director cast 2 hearing actors instead. Audree and her husband filed a grievance with the Screen Actors Guild over the discriminatory snub. And deaf actors and other deaf political groups protested against ABC and the airing of the program, all in a public show of support for using disabled actors in disabled roles. Well, after that protest against ABC, Audree Norton never worked professionally again in mainstream broadcast television. And since there's no such thing as a coincidence, we certainly know Audree Norton was blackballed. Blackballing started as a voting method in the 17th century as a non-democratic way of governing. Instead of a majority vote winning, each voter was instead given a white ball and a black ball, and each voter would then affirm their position by tossing a white ball or a black ball into the voting box. White was affirmative, black meant not happening. And the terrible and fascinating and ironic thing about blackballing is that it gives great power to the minority, where only 1 or 2 black balls is enough to defeat the will of the majority white ball voters. Blackballing is a keen matter of control and conquer, and blackballing is hard to prove because it requires the agreed-upon silence of all the participants to be effective. And so, blackballing is intrinsically powerful and commonly known when it is happening. And blackballing is still sort of invisible and visible at the same time. So blackballing, in everyday use, happens when the word goes out to not use a certain person or a service in order to punish them for not playing along with the majority. Audree Norton challenged the decision of a major television director, and she was punished for her protest by having her career taken away from her. And nobody ever confirms blackballing because it is understood if you do confirm there's a black ball in place, then you are against those calling for the black ball. And if you go against the call to blackball by, say, giving Audree Norton a job in television as an actress, then you, in turn, become the next object of the blackball for not submitting to the will of minority, petty values. So you know a blackball when you see it and live it, but nobody will ever confirm it because they cannot confirm it. Audree Norton was blackballed, and yet she made a quantifiable difference anyway. Before she stood up to ABC, only 30% of deaf roles were played by deaf actors. And a decade after her blackballing, 80% of deaf roles were filled by deaf actors. So, in the end, who won? The evildoers of darkness who blackballed a talented actress who stood up for herself and her people? Or the pioneer rights advocate who took a stand and called out the majority mind for doing the wrong thing? There is no doubt that Marlee Matlin's Academy Award in 1987 for Best Actress in a Leading Role for Children of a Lesser God was directly influenced by the stand Audree Norton took in 1978 against ABC television. You beat a blackball by refusing to play or acknowledging it exists. There are no rules, there is no right and wrong in a morally corrupt world. You go your own way, divining goodness and righteousness in and of the self. And you have faith that one day the sun will spin your way. And you will be set back into the public square, unvanquished and proven right, and you will be celebrated for always doing the right thing when the wrong thing is done against you. Audree Norton won her blackball, and in her example we find the right way to live, and to read, and to teach, and to vote for what we need. And we will never give up going against the bitter wishings of those who actively choose to do us harm. I wonder why so many of us feel the need to punish and condemn when we disagree with someone. And why are we so easily offended and insulted and outraged and made to feel self-centrically small? Instead of accepting a valid point or an honest criticism, we lash out and rip for blood in the killing. For the only way to tamp down dissent is with a pitchfork and a fiery torch on the way down into the grave. The plain matter of the flat plat is that we are too fragile for facts and too timid for the truth. And that is our eternal damnation that willfully keeps us running in circles upon concentric squares that sink us deeper and deeper and farther away from the light. Audree Norton spent the last years of her life teaching English, philosophy, and American Sign Language to deaf and hearing students at a California community college. And she continued to give back to the world that kept her. And Audree Norton never stopped believing in her devotion to help support the community that made her. And she will always be loved back. Thank you for listening. Be a human meme.